sometimes in conversations, I will actually stop and ask the other person and say, hey, thank you for everything you just shared. Now, what's the 20% that you're going to wish you said?
And they're like,
yeah. I'll say, what's the 20% that you wish you're going to think about that you didn't say when you
regret, or that will just bubble over. Now you have to have part 2.
Exactly, which is worse.
It's like the area that you feel like, if I tell them this, I feel the weakest in. And it's like already hard enough to give you the 80. Now I got to like go into the most vulnerable, the depth, and show you like how maybe weak I am. And that's like one of the hardest things to do in our humanity. It's like we don't think other people have that too, but we all struggle with that I don't want to say all, I'm speaking for myself. I knew exactly what you were talking about when you brought that.
Welcome to the AXL Podcast. AXL Creative Co. exists to equip and empower sons and daughters to advance the kingdom of heaven through their creative expressions. On this season of the podcast, we'll be discussing our values. So we've gathered leaders from our community to share what they're experiencing through applying these values in their everyday life. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the AXL Podcast. My name is Bosa.
My name is Evelyn.
My name's Emmanuel.
My name is Jasmine.
And on this podcast episode, we are talking all about trust.
Yes.
A little bit about trust. It says, lean into awkward. We build the trust, character, and relationships of tomorrow by engaging in the tough conversations today. One of the things I love about this value is we build trust by engaging in tough conversations today. So I'd love to just go around the table and share about some tough conversations we've had that have built trust. Just right out the
conversations that we've had.
I was going to say, we could talk about what happened 2 weeks ago.
We can do that. I'm just kidding. We can do that, but let's just start at just general, general. So just conversations you've had that have helped build trust.
I mean, I don't think I have something immediately or specific. And I think as time goes on, I'll probably think of there's some people on this table that I've had some tough conversations with. So, but I feel like one of the main things that sticks out with me is this value of trust is, like you said, comes with intentionality. I don't know anybody that's just trusting people like with their heart.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's so important as we give time to think some stories or specific scenarios, that the main thing that with this value is you have to be intentional to go after this. If you want relationship, if you want not just relationship, but if you want depth in your relationships, because we all know people and have so-called friendships, but not all of them have depth. Yeah. Because not all of them will walk through this value.
That's good. I think I love that you touched on depth, right? So let's give everybody a bit to think about the first question.
I appreciate that.
But let's talk about, you said something about not everybody knows how to trust along those lines. Yeah. I think it's really important to be able to say, okay, what does it look like to build trust? Yeah. So we talked about having tough conversations, but for you guys, could you first define trust? Because we all have different definitions. So somebody might say, oh, I trust them, but really they have withheld, they don't have the tough conversations, they don't build strong relationship. Yeah. So in your own words, how would you define trust?
Go.
I would define it, the first thing that comes to mind is safety. I feel safe with you.
Yeah, that's good.
And like to me, they're very synonymous. Like if I'm saying I feel safe with you, I'm saying I trust you. If I'm saying I trust you, it means I feel really safe with you. But I would say, I think that the phrase that you were highlighting of building trust is so important, because I would say there are different measures of safety, different measures of trust. And so we were kind of laughing when we started this podcast, a little bit. I mean, I was kind of laughing. I was thinking about Emmanuel and how we've never sat down and like talked before. Like we've never we've had passing conversations, a couple moments here and there. But like, we never went to lunch. We never grabbed coffee together or anything like that. But I've known Pastor Ev for nearly 10 years. We're going on almost 10 years of friendship, of knowing each other. And so it would be kind of funny to expect that I have the entire same level of trust for you that I have for her. Yeah. Because it's not that I don't feel safe with you. There's a level of safety that I feel with you. But there are things that I would probably talk to her about way sooner and maybe open up way more than I would do with you right off the bat, because there's safety and trust to be built relationally. Yeah. And so I think I know people who see it as yes or no. I trust you or I don't. That's good. And I don't know if I agree with that. Really I think there are degrees of trust that we grow in. Really it's
like layers of it. Move forward. I actually in that, I feel like that's super important just relationally, and just there's different levels of relationship, you know? And so I got something popped up in my mind of a story, and I literally, no joke, just had a reminder of one of our very first, it might have not been the first, but one of our first, conversations that was difficult, and it was a building trust moment. And so when we were living in the same house, we were roommates in the past, 10 years ago, whatever, and there was some internal households with another person that lived there.
We had another roommate.
There was another roommate, and there was some conflict that I was experiencing with this other individual. And Jazz comes in as like an outsider to move in, and she's like,
"Wait, say the conflict. Say what it was."
I don't remember the details.
I remember.
I mean, I was going through challenges with the girl, but I don't remember
one specific thing.
I don't remember. Put it out there.
It was.
I don't remember.
It was the AC. It was something with the AC. Where there was something with the air conditioning, but that's not important. But I'm feeling passionate about it now. But go ahead.
Something was going on, but there was some internal conflict I was having with her. And of course, as a discerning person, or sometimes you don't have to be super discerning. When you walk into a house, you know, I don't know what's going on here, but there's drama. I don't know what is happening in this place. And so for a couple of weeks, you were feeling that. And I was kind of not being like right away, you know, sharing with it, because I'm like trying to protect maybe or whatever.
I was the new roommate.
And I remember the day sitting on the couch. She goes, "All right, there's something going on here, and I need to lean into this. And I need to say, what is going on?" And it was one of the first moments where I was like, "All right, well, we're gonna see how this goes." You know, like we've been chilling, we've been hanging out, but this is an opportunity. And it was like, you know, whether you were involved in that moment or not, I can't remember the details, but it was my first opportunity to say, all right, let's see how she can handle the things that I share with her right now. Like, can she carry the weight of what's happening here? And that was one of the beginnings, you know, our beginning conversations. Maybe that wasn't super like, oh my gosh, I was guarded about it. But it was one of the moments where I was kind of like, to be honest, we checking like, can she handle?
That's good.
Can I trust her with important information or things that are vulnerable to my heart? And she proved that she could, but it was just a process of like, I honestly was kind of like checking. I wasn't sure yet. You know, I'm like, she's cool, but I'm not sure if I can actually give her this and she can carry this well. And so I feel like that was the beginning of our, you know, building trust moments and knowing like you see this relationship as important. And to me, that's how I look at trust. I'm like, do you feel like this relationship is important enough to have the hard conversation? Because if we don't value a relationship, I don't know if we'll lean into it and actually want to make an opportunity to build, you know.
That's good.
So just some thoughts in my head.
I saw the difference. You said, can they carry it? Like if it's weighty. I think there's a huge difference with the definition of trust that Axel has is it's a tough conversation, but it doesn't really have to be a hard conversation. That's good. And it's how much equity, relational equity, you're willing to put on the front end to have that tough conversation.
That's good.
I think back to when my wife and I were first dating. At first, because we were interested in each other, we were willing to invest and have those tough conversations on the front end. And tough conversations don't have to be awkward. Really, it's awkward for me because I'm sharing about my past and I'm sharing the struggles I had. But there was trust being built there and there was relational equity. So when tougher things came later, the conversation was still easy, though it was weighty.
Yes.
And that's what I think of when we're building trust, is what are we willing to put on the front end to then later ease everything going after as the years. You guys say 10 years in friendship. Like, I'm guessing building trust or having a tough conversation is a little easier now because of all the relational equity that you guys have with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because what happens is over the years you have one trust building conversation, that's one brick laid, and another brick laid, and another brick laid, and eventually you have there's a wall, there's a foundation, there's a fortress there. And so when storms come, when the hard things come, it's like, I know how you're gonna respond. I don't have to wonder if you're gonna abandon this friendship, if you're gonna just leave it and not finish it and not finish the conversation, and you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to wonder that about how we're gonna end the conversation.
But I think that even comes with the reality is, I know that you love me at the end of the day, that there is, I know your heart and you've learned my heart. In those conversations where you started with Christina, it's probably easier now because there's love there, you know? And I know that at the end of the day, this can be challenging, or this can be a conversation that's going to be uncomfortable, awkward, you know? But at the end of the day, I love you enough. And again, you're important enough. And I know your heart.
Yeah, that's good.
So even if it doesn't come off great, because I think a lot of times people are nervous about this value because they feel like they have to have the perfect words. You know, it's like that you start rehearsing, like, how am I going to have this conversation? You start practicing in your mind what you're going to say and how you're going to say, because if I don't do this right, this could go bad. You know, but I feel like at the end of the day, if you love that person, it's a lot easier to go through that conversation because my intentions is to walk out of here building even more trust.
That's good. That's good. I want to touch on something, Emmanuel, you said about you might feel awkward. And so part of this is lean into awkward. And I love our pastor always says, hey, the other person shouldn't walk away from the conversation feeling like, okay, that was weird. And so sharing the hard things, you kind of just shared you guys' story. And I would love to just talk about, what does it feel like as you're prepping maybe to build trust with somebody, you love them, you want to have a conversation about maybe different things, or you want to share parts of your heart that you're like, I've never shared this with anybody, but I feel like maybe the Lord is leading me to do it, or I just feel like this will deepen our relationship. What does that feel like? And then how do you prepare for those type of conversations?
There is a vulnerability in it. If you're preparing to have a conversation with something happened, some whatever scenario happened that maybe rubbed you the wrong way, or it's affecting you in some type of way, there's a sense of vulnerability. Like, it's okay to say, hey, that kind of hurt my feelings. That's awkward because I'm exposing my emotions to you and I don't know how you're going to take it. But I want to build trust with you and I want to show you and share with you what that made me feel. And then we can have that conversation. So it's like there's a sense of vulnerability in it.
That's good.
I think a way that I would respond to that is I kind of prepare myself with the thought of, this could go awesome. Or it's just like bracing myself for either. You know, like just being honest that like, this could go awesome or not. And I love this person enough that I'm going to step into it. And we'll see what happens. That's, you know, good. I think that nervousness or whatever, however you were describing it a second ago, like, I think it really sits in, I just think it's one of the danger zones is when we always expect a conversation to go bad. And we just kind of go into it thinking, this is just going to be horrible. Like, this person's going to hate me forever because I'm saying this, and I'm going to get kicked out of the church because I confronted this person. And da, 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 da. Like, you just like build this case. And I think going into it knowing part of the vulnerability is if you're going to love much, you may also be hurt much. You know, just knowing, all right, I'm going to choose a love, and I don't really know how this is going to end up, but I know I will have chosen love. You know, and so that's a way that I process going into a hard conversation or something that's tough. So,
which I think it's so interesting because even I know so many probably will answer that have walked in this value with AXL or mercy culture is thinking that it's going to go bad first. That's like the initial thought. And so you're like, I'm like preparing for conversation. My heart is like pitter pattering, you know, and I'm like, and I'm like a little anxious, sweaty. And I'm like, okay, Lord, at the end of the day, I've had enough difficult or challenging conversations, you know, with people because of love, because of wanting to pursue relationship. I know enough, and this is where that like remembrance piece comes in, to know that almost every time I've had that build trust moment by leaning into awkward, almost every time the other person is so thankful. But I think what happens is a lot of us have grown up in families that did not do this well. And so I'm thinking about like the table. We're around a table right now. How many families actually in a healthy way have difficult conversations? I know for me, most families, like if they're talking about what's going on in real life, it's on the phone. We call it bochinche, which is like gossiping with other family members. Let me tell you what happened and what she did. Or it's like complete, like we don't talk about it. And so we call it in like therapy, there's like an elephant in the room, the pink elephant. Like this is here, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. And you just like, everyone's eating and there's this awkward like silence or just like dancing around the topic, you know. And I feel like most of us want to be able to talk about hard things.
That's good.
But we have different experiences that have kept us nervous or afraid or thinking the worst. But the reality is we love, at the end of a hard conversation, I'm like, I love you so much. Thank you that you would come to me, that I'm important enough to you, or that you show me enough love to lean in and make this moment, you know. And so I feel like it's just our experiences have not always showing us this is great.
That's good.
When people build trust with me, especially if it's involving something that I did to hurt their feelings or something, like I feel so thankful. I feel thankful that that they care. I think you said this earlier, enough about our relationship to say something. Like I feel like, I'm so thankful they care. Like this is gonna help us actually relationship live, you know. And then I also feel thankful that they're helping me grow. That maybe I won't make that mistake anymore because I know it now. But I probably didn't know it the first time, you know, or whatever. And so I just think it's healthy to remember the benefits of building trust, the beauty of it, in a culture that's probably trained you to think about the fear of it and how detrimental it will be to everything. You know, if you tell the truth, if you try to have the hard convo.
That's good. I love this perspective. I love this conversation because I feel like part of what it's doing is a perspective shift and also like a unlearning the things that we've learned. I think of that scripture. I don't know the address, but the whatever's lovely, whatever's pure, whatever, like think on these things. And so having that heart posture when we go into these conversations that, again, like I'm just going to think on like, it's to build trust. Because sometimes you want to, this is what I've learned. If you're angry, that's probably not the best time to build trust, right? Like I'm about to come in here, I'm about to show you all the things.
But that's what happens in our mind. We're like, I want to. This is what I'm about to tell you, and then the Lord's like, no,
chill.
Check. Holy Spirit, check.
Breathe.
How about you go pray about this right now and get your heart pure and clear?
True. But when you have the mindset, like it's to build something, or like you said, invest in something.
Beautiful.
When that's the heart posture, it becomes something completely different. So I love telling on myself, and I love asking others to tell on themselves. So here's the question: has there been a time where you took the wrong approach, where you were like, I'm gonna build trust, and it was like, that didn't build trust because I decided to do it wrong?
Are you gonna tell on yourself first?
You go first.
I like to tell myself, but how about you tell us?
Leaders go first, right? I'll tell myself. I'm a twin, if y'all didn't know. My sister and I have been locked since the womb.
Got a lot of history, huh?
Those are not gang signs. That was just
I don't know what that was. About to start binding it.
Just let me put my hands down. And so there is this thought, because so I'm Nigerian. In some of our cultures, you just don't talk about it, right? Like, so we have part of that of like, it's nothing. And so coming into actually this last 2 years has been interesting because it was like, we have to actually share our thoughts and feelings. Like being in this culture, you're like, okay, let's have the hard conversations. But it didn't start off like actually like, hey, I want to share my heart. No, like, hey, can we? It was like, you, bah, 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 bah. And then we just like, we'll just walk away from the conversation.
Felt that.
Yeah.
You felt it, right?
Yeah. You should apologize to her.
We'll walk away from the conversation. And it didn't build anything. Like we'd wake up the next day still angry. There's so many examples. I can't choose one because there's so many. And we have grown, but even still we have our moments where I'm like, bro, you being passive aggressive. No, you being passive aggressive. Okay, and then we don't get anywhere. And I've learned that the times where it's like, hey, let's pause, let's build trust. This is how I feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it not coming from I want to attack you so you know you were wrong and like you know you hurt me, but it's more so, okay, I want to seek to understand you, and I want you to understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Those have been the most
It's a game changer.
fruitful conversations. So I'm telling myself that we still are growing.
Well, family is the hardest to do this with sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's easier sometimes to do it with people in community like this than it is your own.
Yeah, because you don't got to see them at the Thanksgiving dinner. You just,
Come on, Thanksgiving.
I keep thinking about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you're 2 weeks away.
I was
You're like
like,
3 weeks away.
Deep in my soul.
So that turkey. Do you like turkey? Yeah,
No.
this is a
Ham.
sidebar.
That's
I
because she hasn't had my turkey yet. I haven't made some good
Oh.
turkey.
10
Okay.
years, no turkey?
No turkey.
Well,
No,
yeah.
I don't make turkey really.
Okay, we need to change it.
No, but I think Bosa, even that the reality what you were talking about with your sister is one of the things that I think we noticed as a community is that axiom lean into awkward became like
The value.
That was it. Like I'm gonna lean into awkward with so and so, and that is almost like that. I'm gonna tell you how I feel. I'm gonna tell you how you made me feel, kind of thing. And
I'm gonna show you.
Nobody feels good with that. And naturally, as human beings, whenever you tell me what I did, there's this reaction I have, like, wait a minute, I want to defend myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the goal is not to tell you what you did wrong. The goal is to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And this is how I perceived it. It allows the wall of defense to just crash.
That's good.
And it gives the opportunity to say, you may have not felt that, but this is how I experienced that. And it just takes all that defense mechanism that we all have that sometimes we needed to like survive in certain scenarios. It takes it down and it gives us the opportunity to say, I love you and I don't want to hurt you. I'm actually, there's moments where I think you said something similar where someone has leaned in awkward to build trust. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad that for a month you've been feeling that. Like I had no idea. That what I said or didn't say or how I said it actually hurt you. That actually breaks my heart.
That's good.
And this is an opportunity to make things right.
That's good.
Well,
that response. Oh, go ahead.
No, go. We're both jumping. Go.
That response is like walking in humility, because so many times they're like, can we build trust? I want this happened, or you hurt me this way, and you're like, no, I didn't. Like that's I want to respond that way. And with family, my little brother would do something, I'm like, dude, you're dumb, like why did you do that? And then you're dumb. No, you're dumb. It's like, hey, let's settle down here.
Success.
Yeah. What did that do? Nothing. And so it's a killing of your pride to not want to defend yourself.
That's good.
It's just wanting to.
It's true.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You want to build trust? I want to build something right now.
It's true. Yeah.
It's like, all right, settle down, like walk in humility and say and listen and hear.
It makes me think of the origin stories of that phrase, lean into awkward. I think the heart behind it when that phrase was birthed in our community is the thought that when you're walking with people, when you're in community, building relationship with people, that a lot of times there are moments where trust gets broken.
Yes.
And so if you can imagine two people standing on a plank of wood or something together or whatever, just roll with me, I don't know. And there's like a gap that's created, like a hole in the middle of it that is supposed to be the way that they find each other and connect with each other. But when that chasm is created, when that gap, when there's a breach there, then they can't connect. They can't make it to one another, And so the idea is that I'm going to lean towards you instead of leaning away from you so that we can reconnect and find trust again. Yeah. And so the typical response that we have as humans in our fear, I would say our sin response in fear, is that when somebody hurts our feelings, makes us mad, bothers us, breaks trust, whatever it is, we want to lean away.
Protect.
We want to be like, well, I'm not talking to that person anymore because last time they did this and did that, and she said this and said that, so I'm not talking to her no more ever again about this or whatever the case is. And we lean completely away from that relationship. And what we're saying is, no, I'm going to lean towards you instead of leaning away from you because this relationship matters. But it requires for the other person to lean as well. And that's the humility lean. You know, that humility of saying, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm gonna lay down my defenses. I'm gonna be humble, as both of you were saying.
So good,
I'm gonna ask questions. I'm gonna hear you completely. I'm not gonna interrupt and let you get it all out. You know, there's so many elements there, but I think the heart is we're gonna lean toward each other and not away from each other whenever there's conflict because we want to bridge, make a bridge where there once was a breach. You know,
and I think that's so important because I mean, this is an AXL podcast, right? And so we're all creatives and stuff like that. And I feel like one of the things I've noticed a lot is, again, there's a lot of creatives that can do things on their own without community, without partnership, without collaborating. And so one of the things that happens in that space, whether it's they do that because of history of relationship, of maybe things not going well with others, or I'm just so used to doing things by myself that I don't invite people. And regardless of what it is that we're in a community right now and we're saying, no, we need each other. We want to be able to build together and support one another, pray for each other, celebrate, collaborate, all these things. And we cannot do this well without leaning into awkward to build trust with people. Like I think most people want deep, healthy relationships. And so I just feel like, man, if we can continue to encourage that within our community and out, that longevity in relationships or even short-term relationships that are there for seasonal reasons need to have this value and need to pursue this value because I know too many people, and maybe have done this in the past, but when it gets tough in a relationship, it's easy to bounce. It's easy to say, this is why, to prove the point of why I can't trust people. See, I shouldn't trust anybody. I shouldn't have done that, you know? And it's like, no, in these moments where it gets difficult, this is the moment where it's like, there's a fork in the road. I'm either going to continue to walk in life doing my own thing, you know, and then being sad internally that I don't have anybody to share these projects with or celebrate or whatever. Or I'm going to say, man, I'd rather have this uncomfortable, awkward conversation and say, okay, this is an opportunity to lean in and man, what if this goes really well? And I have a person that's on my side that I can trust, you know? And so I'm even thinking about you both. So like we've had, to be honest, like just some beautiful moments since we've met that we're like, we can just easily be like, oh, we're just going to the same church and doing things. But no, like God's given opportunities for us to build together and grow together and be like, hey, I didn't understand that, but can we sit and talk about it more?
Wow.
And I'm so thankful because we can sit here and be like, this is awkward. We didn't do this ourselves, you know, like, no, but we can confidently sit here and say, man, my love for you is so much more. Like there's so much more like love there because we've worked through our own stuff, you know? And so it's just, it feels so good to be able to know like we're not dancing around things because we've leaned in and built.
Good.
I've got a story.
Yeah.
It's about you. No, I'm just kidding. It's not about you.
You can share.
This one time Bosa was, no, JK. But I do have a story. Speaking to just the creatives, that whole thought that you were just saying. I remember a couple years ago, I was working on a project, working on an album, and I partnered with this company, this guy that I knew through some mutual friends. We started building, and he was basically going to help with the some distribution, publishing type of stuff for my project without going into too many details. And basically, a couple weeks before the album was set to launch, to drop, or to release. What am I talking about? Launch. It's a book launch. Before I was set to drop, to release the album, he disappeared. He completely ghosted me, like completely stopped responding to any text messages, phone calls, emails, like everything. And I remember just being angry. You want to talk about you want to talk about a breach being created, a breaking of trust. I'm like, man, 3 weeks before the album, and I needed him in order for the release to happen. Wow. It was all connected. Like I couldn't release anything.
This is your baby, your project too. It's dear to you.
He just didn't respond to anything.
Did he die?
No.
Listen,
I thought that's where it was that deep though. Like I had that thought a couple times. I'm like, the dude could have just died. Like I just couldn't figure out where he was at all. Nothing. And so I went from angry to concerned to scared to sad to mad again. Like I was just like
all the emotions,
this cycle of emotions, you know. And I remember just taking it. I brought it to friends to pray. You know, we were just praying for something to shift, and brought it to the Lord and just trying to give it to the Lord. And I felt like the Lord was like challenging me to pray for him, to really like pray for him, to bless him, to you know. And so I started doing that, and the Lord started softening my heart. And then I started to think, what am I gonna do when he reaches back out? Oh. Like when he comes back, whenever that is, because he's gonna resurface somewhere. Social media, I'm gonna see the dude again. He'll be out to
unless he's dead.
Unless he's dead. Right. But like, if he's not dead, like, what am I gonna do when he comes back? And I had all these thoughts. I'm like, well, I could act like nothing happened and just be like, bro, I haven't heard from you. Like, we got to get this song out, and just kind of like kind of skirt over it, you know? Or I'm going to have some really hard conversations.
That's good.
And actually like lean in awkward, build some trust. Like, and I didn't really know him that well. And so I was wrestling with that. And then eventually he reached back out, and his reach out was kind of like casual. Like it was kind of like, hey, sorry, missed a couple calls. Like,
bro, you missed a month of calls.
Like it was like I'm not lying. It was kind of a light response. Wow. And I remember just being like, feeling like my blood boiling. Like, I can't believe this is the response.
You're like lost 2 weeks of sleep, lost 10 pounds, stressed out.
and again, I'm having to process, what am I going to say to him?
Yeah.
What is this first response going to be? You know, what kind of person am I going to be? What kind of creative am I going to be? Am I going to be kingdom or not right now? And so I hit him up and was like, hey, can we please jump on a call? I just want to connect with you. I think it'd be best if we just talk on the phone. So he jumped on the phone, and I told him, he was kind of acting like, he kind of said sorry, but like was just trying to focus on the project. And I said, hey, I know we got a project to talk about, but like, how are you? Like, I haven't heard from you in several weeks, and just as a sister in the faith, like, I'm a little concerned. Like, how are you doing?
That's good.
And I didn't use the phrase, I need to lean into awkward with you. I didn't like, you know, but like, I needed to build trust. But part of the trust was, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, how are you? There's a gap here, and I need to figure out where the gap came from, not for the purpose of my project, but for the purpose of our relationship and your humanity, who you are as a person, as a son of God, you know? And so learned a lot, and he was authentic and answered some questions for me. And then I was honest with him. I told him, I said, hey, this last couple of weeks has been really hard. Like, you kind of ghosted me.
That's
and
good.
like, I have forgiven you. I forgive you for it. But this was really difficult. And I don't know, I was in a contract with him already. I already signed the papers.
Yeah.
And so basically he had my I wasn't allowed to release my album outside of him. And so I basically said, I was like, hey man, I would really love if you would release me of that contract so that I can continue, like I can move on and release it in a different way, because the trust has really been broken here. And I don't really know, I don't know how this is going to go moving forward. I'm not saying I'm not breaking relationship with you. I'm still your sister, but like, I need to put this somewhere else so that I can love you well as my brother.
Good.
Wow.
So
And he honored that, and was just, it was a beautiful conversation. And I know he felt love. He told me, he was like, I just can't believe this is the conversation.
It's
that's
not
happening
the
right now,
norm.
you
Yeah.
know?
No, not at
and so
all.
I'm not saying I can tell you plenty of stories where I didn't do that right.
Yeah.
I'm saying that story to say there are moments as kingdom creatives where it would be easier for us to not lean into awkward.
Yep.
To just get the project done, to just do the thing that we're trying to get done, to be mission focused rather than caring about people and caring about people that God cares about.
Yeah.
Building relationship first, being relationship over opportunity type of people.
Yeah.
And so we have to love people. We have to value relationships, and we're gonna have to have moments of hard conversations that don't feel convenient to us and our creative processes necessarily. And so anyway, that was just
I love that.
That speaks so much about like just your integrity. Because I hear stories. We see stories on the news and social platforms. I remember a few years back, Will Smith had this whole reunion thing where he had conversations with people, and Janet Hubert, I think, first Aunt Viv was out there, and she just responded like, "Hey, what you did or whatever the situation was hurt her deeply, and she had to be recasted and all these other things." And like, but because they didn't have the conversation up front, and I think one of the definitions of trust is reliability, and especially in the entertainment industry, like you want to be someone that's reliable.
That's good.
And if there's one whiff of you not being reliable, you get blacklisted, you're done. You get, okay, cool, you have that album or you have that movie launch, but then you're never heard of again because they just wanted to get the thing done, but I can't trust you anymore, so I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And that's wild. There was that whole Fast and the Furious thing, like Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson, like couldn't stand each other. They don't like their professionalism on set. But what would have happened if they had that conversation behind closed doors? I also think of Coach Kerr with Stephen Curry, had a greatest shooter of all time, had that conversation, had a very difficult conversation with Stephen Curry, and Coach Kerr said he is the most coachable player I have ever met.
I love that.
Now, he played with the Bulls. Coach Kerr played with the Bulls, saying he's the most coachable player.
That's good.
Like the reliability that it speaks of when you have those tough conversations on the front end. That's wild. That was awesome what you did.
I was working through some things.
There was enough time to pray. Releasing.
Well, and I will say too, full circle, like me and that guy we hit each other up all the time. And so it's a relationship that was preserved, trust that was built.
So good.
I wouldn't, just being honest, run to him and work with him immediately. But like the relationship was strengthened because of the conversation, and I'm thankful for that.
That's really good.
Yeah, you also didn't put him on blast, and you also didn't call him out, and all this, which happens in this industry. And so people have the opportunity to pray and ask the Lord if they're supposed to work with them on their own. But you did a really great job with honoring him by having that conversation where so many others would have said, yo, let me tell you what, and it just gets unhealthy, and
that's really
it's not
good.
Cool. So
that's
it's loving
really
people.
One of the parts that I love with what you're saying, we build the trust, character, and relationships. So when we choose to lean in with people, it's actually helping build character. So even that process that you had to go through of like wrestling with the Lord, like that is character development for you as well. And like, okay, God, you got to help me have this conversation. Like, but on the flip, I love how he came on, because that's how a lot of us want to respond. We want to avoid conflict. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna like address it, but not address it, and I'm gonna kind of make it a little lighter than it actually is.
Well, he said 2 calls, missed a couple calls.
I wouldn't say that's an exact quote. He definitely minimalized the way.
When I think this is the point, even in that comes to my mind when I hear you say that, is when we take that and we ask the Lord to help us have these conversations, because one of them is being led by the Spirit and not the flesh, that helps conversations like this go well, is that somebody can walk through some like character flaws or things like that for years, and no one ever love them enough to lean into that, to build trust, to say it. And some people have just been waiting, but no one has. And what happens if we're the ones to say, I'm going to take the initiative and stop in my tracks to put the agenda or put the project to the side and say, this person's important enough. And your conversation, your awkwardness, your uncomfortability actually be what helps that person start the healing process of or even see it as an issue when everyone's allowed them, maybe because of their gifting, to move forward and never address it. You know, and character stuff continue with them in their journey, and God entrust us with an opportunity to say, hey, this isn't about you. What if you getting uncomfortable or you just obeying or getting, having this ability to be awkward in a moment to build is what starts that journey of their healing.
You were mentioning us talking to people, having conversations with people that bringing up things that maybe nobody else has ever brought up, and just how, intense, how important those conversations are. And I think a lot of those types of conversations or those topics, they're rare to come up, not because people don't ever have hard conversations, but I think it's mainly because people don't always go 100% in hard conversations.
That's good.
And so we have a tendency as humans to like go 80%, the 80% that's comfortable, the 80% that's like we know that's gonna be okay to say, and then the 20% that we think is gonna like break the back of the situation, we're like, well,
break the camel's back.
I'm not gonna say that part. I'll say you hurt my feelings, but I'm not gonna say you've done this 30 times or whatever. Like, you'll just skip the most important part, like the part that actually has the power to change everything. And it was just a powerful concept that I learned when we first started implementing this culture, where I was just like, crap, like I think I do that a lot, like where I would go 80% with people and not say the hardest thing. And so I think that's so important. And sometimes in conversations, I will actually stop and ask the other person and say, hey, thank you for everything you just shared. Now, what's the 20% that you're gonna wish you said?
And they're like,
I'll say, what's the 20% that you wish you're gonna think about that you didn't say when you
you
leave this
regret,
room?
or that will just bubble over. Now you have to have part 2.
Exactly, which is worse.
Yeah, I feel like one of the reasons why that 20% typically most people don't lean into, when you said that one day, you learned that concept, and I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's like the area that you feel like, if I tell them this, I feel the weakest in. And it's like already hard enough to give you the 80. Now I got to like go into the most vulnerable, the depth, and show you like how maybe weak I am. And that's like one of the hardest things to do in our humanity. It's like, we don't think other people have that too, but we all struggle with that I don't say all, I'm speaking for myself. I knew exactly what you were talking about when you brought that.
And we keep each other accountable in it.
Yep.
We have hard conversations. I'll be like, well, did you finish? Did you give them the last 20?
Yeah. Is there anything else that you didn't say? And I'm like,
and they'll be like, go back and say it. We'll do it for each other.
It doesn't, you want it to get easier with that. For some reason, that part is still like,
Well, because of the weakness, would it be because I think of when you see a wounded dog on the street, they're very defensive because they don't want to show that they're weak.
That's a good picture.
So interesting.
And so you don't want to give them that extra 20 because that's the wound. And you don't want to open up a wound. Why? What if they stick their finger in there and start messing with you more? It's going to hurt more. I think could it be that? I don't know.
It's that like protect. That's that area. I still want to have some control and like to protect a little bit more. I need a little bit of control. Like I feel like I can lose control when I'm giving you everything. I'm no longer in control.
That's good.
So there's something still there that I can kind of like, good. I think we can get through this now. Like you heard 80%. I think we can move forward.
But it's like, would you drive over a bridge that was 80% built?
That's good.
Oof. No. You'd be like, so that's not, trust is not built. You know what I mean? And so it's so important that we finish it.
That's good.
We go all the way. Because that person we don't know how to grow. We don't know how to fix it. We don't know. It's not,
Yeah. I was cracking. Something happened to me that was really hard. Like last week that I was really working through. I felt like I was traumatized a little bit by it. And I'm telling Pastor has the story. And she just starts laughing so hard. And I'm like, but I'm better by this point. But I was just thinking about how there was a moment where I was like, oh, shoot, I think this is really deep because it reminded me of something when I was little. And so even that, like, sometimes these kind of conversations bring up wounds from the past.
Yes.
It's not just the wounding maybe that happened at the moment. It's also bringing something up that hasn't been touched.
That's good.
From the past. And
Guys,
that's scary.
I didn't know it was a childhood wound.
I was fine.
You said clarification.
I didn't know.
It was really, really funny because it helped me like realize like, oh wow, this is actually like I am like really going through something that's a lot deeper, and this is good. I needed to hear this, but
Meanwhile, I couldn't breathe.
she literally in tears, and I'm like, okay, and then I laughed too, you know,
Yeah.
it was kind of funny at the end of the day, but I just think that's another reason why sometimes that happens is because we know there's something here that I don't know if I'm ready for.
That's good.
God's trying to highlight it.
That's good. I'm somebody who I've been growing in the 100% conversation, right? And I think we were having a conversation, and I realized my problem is I don't process quickly. Like, I'm a slow processor, so I wasn't prepared. Like, I didn't fully process what I wanted to share. I knew the first chunk, but I think in another conversation you were talking about the why, like getting to the root. I didn't necessarily do that. So then later I'm like, oh, here's the 20%, and let me tell them now. So it's like that awkward, if you don't know the 100%, you have to go back and be like, so my bad. Here's the rest of it. And thank you.
So that's a good note.
Uh-huh.
Just in that processing before you step into those types of conversations.
Yes.
I'm not talking about for you. I'm not like
It is
you advice. I'm just saying in
You're like, I
general.
I have got to go.
I'm just saying in general, like that's beautiful. Like I think we could forget that. Sometimes we probably shouldn't just do off the cuff. Be like, I'm just gonna go build trust. Like, probably should process a little bit with the Lord first. Like, talk to Him about it. Because sometimes we think we're leaning in and building trust because of something somebody else did, and when we get into the presence of God, God's like, actually, you have trust issues. You know, and something else comes up that needs to be a part of that conversation. So I love that.
To your point, what processing with the Lord first. Because I think there's way more damage done if you just go to or process your thoughts out on that person. You will hurt them.
Listen.
And you're not building, you're just like demolishing.
That's
now.
good.
It's demo day for that person because you're just processing out loud, and then you realize you're the one with the problem. You're like, well, I'm sorry.
You sound like you have no experience in this.
It was the waffle back.
It happened to me so many times. Just like, I'm so sorry. And now building trust is like reverted to you. You're like, well, let's talk about the problems that you have right now or what you're going through. And you're like, I'm sorry. It was me the whole time.
Yeah, we actually planned this as an intervention.
You know, Christina was sharing with me yesterday.
Wow.
Just kidding.
That's so funny.
Just kidding. JK.
I love it. I think there's so much more we could talk about trust and what it looks like to build in relationship and character. But for this episode, we're done. Thank you guys. It's been fun.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the AXL Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and stay up to date with everything that's going on. For more information, visit axlcreativeco.com or follow us on all socials at AXL Creative Co. We'll see you next time.